Welcome to the first build video of this series. Today we are going to start prepping the parts to be able to do the soldering and connecting all the wires and everything. Today we're going to start out with our Proffieboard, and we're going to do what they call pre-tinning the connection points on there. In other words, we're going to go ahead and on the ports that we know we're going to be using, we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of solder. So I'm using just some regular solder that's a 0.6 made for electrical use, for electronic parts like this. So we're going to go ahead and start putting this all together and adding those pieces on there. So I'm going to move you over to the Kyber cam so you can kind of see what I'm doing as we're going through this process. So what I have starting out with is I have this stand. It allows me to be able to put the board in and be able to hold it in place without causing any damage to it. Now I have yet to use this thing, so I've got to make some adjustments to be able to get it to fit the way I need it to fit, so bear with me. So we've got the board in place. I'm going to go ahead and start getting ready to prep the ports that we're going to use. I'm using some solder flux. I'm going to apply little dabs with a Q-tip to the ports that we're going to actually be using. All right, so I know the first three ports we're going to be using are actually going to be some of the ports that are going to the NeoPixel PCB connection, where we're going to be connecting the actual LED strips at what's going to actually activate the blade and activate the LEDs inside the blade. So I'm going to set those three up first, or the two of those three up first, and get those in place so that those are ready. So as you can see, we finally finished doing the pre-tinning of the Proffieboard. All the ports that I'm going to be using to connect are now pre-tinned and ready to go, so that I'll be able to just simply wire everything up onto the board. We're going to move on from here to the power board, which is what allows you to plug in the power cord into the USB-C port on the switchboard and be able to charge the lithium-ion battery that's inside it, but also allows the battery to pass power through it to activate and operate the Proffieboard, powering the blade and all the stuff on there. So we're going to move on to that next. All right, so here is the power board pre-tinned and ready to go. I know it's kind of hard to see with the way the lighting is, but you can see here the two ports here on the ends and up here at the top, they all have their solder in place so that I can then attach the wiring to it to be able to power the board and charge the battery. Now, the next step from here that I want to do is to go in and take the switch that I have and see if I can attach wires to the unused pins of the USB-C, where it shows that those are supposed to be data lines. Because my theory, if it works, and hopes, is to be able to utilize this to where I can just simply plug in the USB-C cord into the chassis itself, connect it to the computer, and be able to directly upload any profile changes and any software changes that I want to do without having to pull the whole thing apart. Not sure if I'll be able to do it or not, but that's what we're going to try and see if we can manage to get that set up. The reason why I'm having to do it with the switch that I'm doing, though, and I'm going to show you guys here the switch that I've got. The reason why I'm having to do it with this particular switch is mainly because the chassis that I've got, and I'll show you here. I'm trying to get it situated. I'll show you underneath the camera here. But this particular switch has to be used with the chassis that comes with, or that is made for the LGT style sabers from DamienSaber, which is overseas. So these are LGT boards and LGT sabers that I'm using as kind of the lower end, kind of the intro starting ones. It's not something that's going to be like your KR sabers or some of the other, your core banths and things like that are the higher end custom sabers out there. These are the ones that are a little bit on the cheaper side as far as the housings go, the actual empties as they call them. And I'm utilizing that for my first build because the last thing I want to do is mess up a $600 or $700 chassis setup, by not, damaging one of these boards or something. So I started on the lower end. But this one here has the USB-C port, as you can see here. But the unfortunate part is on the underneath side of this, there are two ports that aren't connected, or two pins that aren't connected, and those are data ports. But with having this and having to use it with this back plate on here, that actually goes into my 3D printed chassis that I've got, and I'll kind of show you here. It goes inside the chassis right here, and this is where the power button and the USB-C charging port will go. And that whole piece actually sits inside this opening right here. And it goes on these little tabs that, let me do this. These little tabs that are right here and right here, and it actually moves up and down on. It rests on these two plates, or these two notches right here, and then the ones that are down here as well. And I'm trying to get the focus a little bit better. But it sits in there. So otherwise I'd have to try to come up with something else, and it was just easier to spend the $15 and buy the actual switch plate that's designed for this lightsaber build, and hope that I can actually get it done correctly. So all that's going to go inside this chassis that's here, and hopefully be able to get it to work. This is where the switches go. You got your Proffieboard here, and then there's space for the additional boards. Speaker goes down here on this end here, and on that end there is where the PCB for the blade connections go. So all that's got to go inside this to be able to fit inside the chassis that you guys have seen in prior videos. So we've got this set up as far as getting it pre-tinned, but I want to make sure that I have the right length wiring and everything to be able to reach where I'm needing to put this, which is going to be, as I said, down here in this lower section of the build. Because the Proffieboard, for instance, when it goes in, it sits here just like this. So I've got the space here and all of this area to be able to add the additional boards, which again is, of course, the power board, my Bluetooth capable board, and I believe that may be all. I'm not sure. I've got so many different pieces here to be able to do, but I want to be able to get everything to fit in here properly. So that's what we're working on. And I know I'm being a little long-winded here for you, but I want to give you the detail, like I said I was going to do, as to how we're going to do this. So the next step is to go ahead and see if I can't get this switch set up to where I can add those additional wires on the backside and be able to utilize those other particular pins. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that, get that all taken care of. I'll show you what we got here in just a few minutes. All right, so we were able to go in and add these wires on like I was hoping to. As you can see here, we've got one of the data wires here and the next one over. I know it looks really, really close, but trust me, I've looked at it under my magnifying glass, because I've actually had to move from just using this to actually using my magnifying glass setup so that I could see it, because, you know, with these older eyes, it's getting harder and harder to be able to see these small components. So I've gone in and made sure that we're soldered properly. There's gap between them so we don't have any possibility of short from what I can tell. Now, I've made these wires fairly long, as you can see, because I want to make sure that they reach. So my next step from here is going to be, I'm going to unsolder the 4 wires that you see here, which are my battery charging over here on the blue and white, and then my signal wires to the board here, the red and green. I'm going to go in and utilize wiring that I have here to just cut longer ones and solder those on, because I want to make sure I've got plenty of length for those other board pieces, the Bluetooth and everything, to be able to put in that area that I showed you earlier so that everything will fit. So that's what we're going to do now. So it looks like we had some success here. I don't know if you can really tell in looking here, but I was able to go in and extend the lengths of the main wire here. The ones that were on this were like extremely short, so there was no way they were going to be able to reach to the bottom of the chassis like I need them to. So I extended to make sure I've got plenty enough wire to be able to reach to the location that I want to be able to put everything. Then I'll trim them to the length they need to be, attach them to the component that they're going to go to, and then have it ready to be able to install inside the chassis. Also, I don't know if you can tell, but I was able to solder those two properly in place and get the wiring done. So hopefully these will be the data lines that I'll be able to connect. Now, those data lines are actually going to connect to this micro USB chip or port connector that's here, that will actually go inside the connector here, actually upside down. It'll go inside the connector here on top of the Proffieboard, which will give us that connection point to be able to upload all the information to the board without having to pull everything apart. That's the theory. I'm hoping that it's going to work. I'm hoping by doing all this I haven't damaged this switch, because if so, it's going to take me a couple weeks to get another one shipped over, because that, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff for the LGT Sabers do come from China through AliExpress. And so this is the last component that I had been waiting on, and it took about 3 weeks for this thing to show up. So I'm really hoping I haven't messed anything up. I don't believe I have, because I've managed to be able to go in and solder everything properly. My only concern is those 2 points. I do think there's enough of a gap between there. I don't think, and I'm going to look at it closer underneath the magnifying glass to be able to make sure that we have the gap there so we don't have any kind of crossing or shorting between those 2 wires. So we're going to take a look at that under the microscope now and make sure that we're right. So looking here, as you can see, and I know you're getting a reflection from my camera light, it does look like I've got enough of a space there and a gap between those 2. So let's do it this way. Let me pull it out of the holder, and we'll actually bring it closer to the camera and see if it'll focus. And there we go. So looking, we do have the space in between the 2 ports, or the 2 connections, so we should be good to go there. Now, I did go based off of, and let me turn it this way, what it shows as being DC positive and DC negative on the board here, as you can see, and going by the schematic layout that I have that shows where those particular connections are at, and on the USB-C, looking at that, that's the 2 ports and 2 connection points that I should have. Now, with that being said, based on what I've seen, my yellow should be my signal positive, and my black should be my signal negative, going to that particular plug that's going to go inside or plug into the Proffieboard USB mini plug. So gonna double check that and make sure, and then we're gonna go ahead and start sizing things up to try to be able to do some soldering onto these other boards that we need to. Before I get to that though, I'm gonna go ahead and determine which one of the two Bluetooth boards I have I'm gonna go ahead and use in this build so that I can have the Bluetooth capabilities set up to be able to work, and figure out where or which one I have to do so I can start pre-tinning those particular connections on that. So we're going to look at that now. So we got the final part done for the Bluetooth piece, and as you can see here, we've got everything soldered on. We got the two ground connections, the receive and transmit being the blue and the green, and then the red and black being our additional ground and our power going to the Bluetooth card. So what I'm actually going to do is take this particular piece now, and I'm going to put it in heat shrink tubing to shrink it down and make sure that everything stays connected properly and doesn't come apart, and also doesn't ground out inside the chassis. So that's the last step that I'm going to do with this piece, but that's going to be in the next video. So thanks for joining me in this one here. We got a lot left to go on this build, so I look forward to bringing you guys more of the build here real soon. Thank you for joining me on this build tonight, guys. I do appreciate each and every one of you that did show up. Don't forget, if you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe button down here in the corner. Click that notification bell so that way you get the updates of when these videos do go live. If it's something that you enjoyed and you think somebody else might enjoy it, go ahead and share the video, share the channel. I do appreciate it when you guys do that. Trying to build the channel up and be able to do more content just like this for you guys. So don't forget, the socials will come across the bottom here. That's where you're going to get the most up-to-date information as to when these videos are going to go live. So with that being said, I will say thank you for joining me once again, and as always, may the Force be with you.